What's up, guys? Joshua here with TheCardGuyz, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys a deck tech for my Dawnblade Dorinthea deck that I took to the World Championship 2025 in Philadelphia. I placed 39th, and I went 7-2 in Classic Constructed with this very deck. I think this deck is excellently positioned in the metagame. It attacks Cindra, Verdance, and Gravy, has game into the other decks as well, and it is a very, very aggressive deck. It is a deck that is trying to snowball Dawnblade, and it is a deck that is constructed quite differently than the decks before because, well, if you have an eagle eye, you will notice that there is no copies of Warrior's Valor in this deck list. And the reason for that is that this deck is trying to generate agility tokens. We have Lead with Speed here, we have Shift the Tidal Battle here. We also have several other agility makers in the sideboard. And we're trying to present a difficult problem for our opponent. We're trying to present Dawnblade with Go Again and, hold back as much information as possible. I think that is a very, very important part to defeating Verdance, is if you play several things before combat, like a Warrior's Valor, it narrows the amount of possibilities that you have, because not only are you expending a card, you're also expending a resource, and it just tells the Verdance, how much they need to block. And, well, basically this deck started off as a Living Legend deck. Now, I was a giant LL Coper and tried to make Warrior work in LL. Unfortunately, that was not possible. But this deck basically started as a 51 attack react deck, and my teammate Damien worked quite hard on this list as well with me. A big shout out to him. He helped me refine and remember that the core of Dorinthea is to be aggressive with Dawnblade. If you're not snowballing counters, if you're not trying to play the deck aggressively, you really are not embracing the core of what Dorinthea is about. And basically it started off as a heavy attack react deck, and we slowly took it down a little bit. Now there's 30 something attack reacts instead of 50 something attack reacts, and I think this is a very, very nice balance. So I'm going to run through the main deck here, and then we're going to take a look at the sideboard and all that. If you want the sideboard guide for this deck, where I go over 15-20 different matchups with buttons and sideboard plans and all that, you can check out our Patreon. There's a link below. However, I will be going through the whole deck. I will be giving the deck list. I will be running through the sideboarding for the main matchups. So even if you don't support there, I'm still going to give you quite a bit of information in this deck tech. So yeah, all right, let's get going. And I will try to explain as much as I can, because even though this deck is using a lot of the main culprits, this is a deck that is heavily dependent on this card right here, Courage of Bladehold. This is a Courage of Bladehold style Dorinthea deck. There is Grains in the sideboard, but that's only played against Gravy Bones and maybe some very, very other select matchups. But the core idea of this deck is that you are trying to triple hit when you have a Steelblade Supremacy or a Glistening Steelblade. Glistening Steelblade is in the sideboard because it's not played in every single matchup, but basically by presenting a triple hit, you are able to outvalue a lot of different decks, and you also create the possibility of your opponent blocking incorrectly. That is, giving your opponent the opportunity to make a mistake is actually a big part of playing Dorinthea. So yeah, keep that in mind, that this is a Dawnblade focused deck with Courage of Bladehold when I go through this deck. All right. Up first, we got Lead with Speed. This is the new Warrior's Valor. This is a extremely good card. Going first, you can get an agility token out. This card also allows you to set up a bit for your future turns, and it allows you to have that big burst of damage with basically an extra card. In this deck, we don't want to be using a card for Go Again on a turn we want to be really aggressive, unless it's something really good like Unsheathed, Glistening Steelblade, or Glint that we're going to get reprise, or like a super modal card like Beat. So Lead with Speed basically enables us to set up a future turn. It also allows us to, make our Dawnblade significantly bigger on the first or second attack. And because this card pumps by 3, if they are a deck that's cutting corners a little bit on their block value, this could create an awkward situation where they either have to block with multiple cards or they have to use their armor, both of which are good for us. So this is a great card. Auto 3 of agility tokens is where we want to be as Dawnblade Dorinthea. Up next, we've got Steelblade Supremacy. I've talked about this card many times. I don't know if I really need to explain much, but basically, triple hitting with this card will enable us to win games because 1 card 6 that draws 3 cards is absolutely nuts. Generally, we're going to want to play the Steelblade Supremacy when we have an agility token, or we have some source of go again plus a twinning blade would be good, or when we have power cards like Singing Steelblade, Route. Obviously, it combines well with Determination and stuff like that. This is a deck that, if you draw this on turn 0 with the Iron Song Determination, you might blow your bolters as well. Like, this card is extremely strong, and, we're going to be triple hitting with this as much as we can. This is also a card that gains us a lot of tempo when we play it, because your opponent has to respect it, or they just have to let the value go. And because we are playing an aggressive list, we are using our life as a resource. We're using our armor to stuff the first disruption, or we're just using our armor very aggressively in general. We will often have a lot of cards to back this up, meaning it's very, very likely that this draws us several cards. Excellent card. Unsheathed, this is one of the best cards that's been printed recently. This is one of the reasons why we're chasing Dawnblade counters so aggressively, because if we get a Dawnblade counter, sometimes we'll get the ability to just have go again next turn. For example, if you use Shift the Tide of Battle, you get a Dawnblade counter, then you'll have an agility for next turn. But if we just, if our opponent contests us a little bit, or if we don't, we have an agility generation, this is one of the best cards that we can draw on the following turn after we have a Dawnblade counter, because obviously this gives us go again at no resource costs. And the no resource cost is very important because it allows us to play our 1 cost reactions. It allows us to have a turn if we just have a yellow. It allows us to use our bracers. There's a lot of great things about Unsheathed, and this is a card that also synergizes very, very well with Twinning Blade because it gives natural go again. Also, if you have an agility token and you have a Twinning Blade, you can, attack, they overblock, and then you unsheath and then get them that way. So you don't always use this on the first attack. You can use this on the second attack as well if you want to be tricky, because it's a very, very flexible card. Sharpened Steel is basically the slightly nerfed version of Unsheathed. Still very, very good. Synergizes with a lot of things. Sharpened Steel provides go again to Unsheathed. Obviously synergizes well with Determination and stuff like that. Sharpened Steel also provides Shift the Tide of Battle, go again, which is very, very nice, and allows you to be quite tricky. Like I said, you can play Sharpened Steel when you have natural go again on the second attack, and if you have a Twinning Blade, and getting blown out like that is really, really, really devastating. To kind of round out the red and yellow non-attack actions, we have Iron Song Determination. This is the card that says once you have a counter, you're going to get to keep the counter alongside its buddy Route. And this is one of the greatest cards that you can have on turn 0 as well. Dorinthea traditionally likes to go second, but if you go first in this deck, there are so many ways to high roll. You can high roll with Lead with Speed. You can high roll with Iron Song Determination. You can high roll with multiple attack reactions. You can high roll with Route. You can high roll with Diamond Amulet, Singing Steelblade. There's several cards in Sideboard as well that are potions and agile engagement and stuff like that. So there's a lot of ways that you can high roll on turn 0, and this is excellent at all stages of the game. It gets armor, it provides go again to Unsheathed, it ensures the Steelblade Supremacy hits. It's a real glue piece. This is a card that I've gone back and forth on, mainly because if you're playing a mid-range Dorinthea deck, this card is not the greatest. But if you're trying to get in there with Dawnblade, and be really aggressive, this is one of the best cards for doing that, because it basically says, "Hey, it's time to race. Let's go," and it just helps you keep your counter. All right, let's take a look at our attack reactions, which is basically all of this here in the center section. There's some of the usual suspects here. We have Blade Flurry, obviously very, very good. 0 for 4 is an excellent rate. Also, it makes the second attack very difficult to block. Blade Flurry has particular synergy with Shift the Tide of Battle because it'll give the attack higher than its base, which is very, very good. It allows the stab go again, more likely to hit. It also brings the Dawnblade to 5, assuming you have no counters, which means Blade Flurry plus Shift the Tide plus a blue is particularly tricky to block for them. And this is something that we often search up with Singing Steel Blade. Excellent to park it in the arsenal. It does everything we need it to do. Iron Song Response Red. This is also a very, very good card. These zero-cost attack reactions have particular synergy with Courage of Blade Hold and Bolters. If you get into a situation where you have both of those in the late game, you can have a very, very strong turn. Often, though, that is less likely to happen because we're going to use our Courage of Blade Hold earlier. We're going to use our Bolters earlier, but there are some games where the hands just line up really naturally and you have Courage and Bolters and you're kind of in a little bit of a later game scenario, and then you have some extreme synergy here. And these help protect the counters, and they're excellent to put into the arsenal. And this plus Rout is also extremely, extremely deadly late game. I killed many of my opponents on the weekend with this combination plus a blue. Yeah, very, very, very strong. Allows kind of like a mini Storm Strider, as you could say. We got 2 copies of Puncture. Puncture, when combined with Singing Steel Blade, gives you +5, assuming they blocked with armor. Very, very important breakpoint because the D-reacts can't cover that. Also, giving a little bit of extra damage is quite nice. And generally, when your opponent uses their armor, they're really trying to stop the Dawnblade, which often means they put multiple cards plus their armor in front of it. And being able to go Singing into Puncture is pretty backbreaking. Yeah. Just 2 because we just don't really need 3 in this current metagame. This actually was cut down to 1 at one point, but now we're back at 2. If you want to exchange this for an Out for Blood or Circle Foresight, go for it. You know, I did the deck list did have those at one point, and I did quite enjoy playing with those. Got 2 copies of Jagged Edge. Currently in this metagame, there are a decent amount of prevention effects. Notably, Verdance has Mental Block. You know, Prism has a bunch of Ward, and you know, sometimes you just hit things like, you know, Take It on the Chin for Kassai. There's a lot of little things that you can hit with Jagged Edge, and we have a 3rd Jagged Edge in the sideboard. And this basically allows you to be very, very aggressive into Prism, you know, clearing their board. This list does not have poppers. This list is based on letting the Heralds hit, unless they're very, very important, then we'll use our armor. And basically clearing their board with Jagged Edge plus Beat of the Iron Song, or just a ton of damage that they can't block. But yeah, it's 1 cost +3, doesn't need reprise. Often gets the job done. In particular, these +3 pumps synergize nicely with Blade Flurry. And that's part of why we want to hold back so much information, is because if we are holding 2 attack reactions, it becomes basically automatic that our Dawnblade is going to connect. And it also makes it very, very difficult for our opponents to block. Speaking of cards, making cards very, very, or weapon very, very hard to block, Rout, I think I killed like 4 people with Rout. 4 out of my 7 wins were with Rout. This is obviously a game-winning card, but we have 2 copies right now for several reasons. You can have that turn 0 high roll that with Singing Steel Blade, you're also more likely to naturally draw it on turn 0. Also, because we are trying to protect our Dawnblade counters once we start going, this is one of the best ways to protect it. If they slam their whole hand down after you've gotten several counters, you can either blow them out with Twinning Blade, Singing Steel Blade, or Rout, or Iron Strong Determination also gets there too. Yeah, this is such a great card in this aggressive version of the deck. Yeah. All right, Singing Steel Blade. This is a card that obviously is extremely good. It oftentimes is searching for glint or twinning. Sometimes you also search for the attack reactions. It really depends on the situation. But in order to use this card properly, you need to understand the likelihood of your opponent blocking, which is something that will take some time to learn. But this is one of the most powerful cards, throughout the whole game, because if your opponent's trying to contest you for counters, this often allows you to pick the best response to ensure you get counters or get damage in or trigger a draw with Steelblade Supremacy. Also, later in the game, once you've acquired counters, this is one of the best ways to protect it by having natural go again, singing Steelblade into Twinning Blade, and then you can go unsheathed, swing, something like that is extremely backbreaking for your opponent. And then late game, obviously, it can search up some game-winning combos with, route. Very, very, very beautiful card, and it's pretty good. Speaking of cards that are pretty good, Twinning Blade. This is one of the strongest cards in the whole deck because this deck is based on having go again. There is no on-hit go again in this deck. It is every single time Dawnblade's coming in, as long as you have bolters up, there's a chance that it has go again. Oftentimes, you will use the bolters as kind of bait, forcing your opponent to block, and then you can play things like Glimpse of Quicksilver or Reprise of Singing Steelblade. But yeah, Twinning Blade allows you to blow out people when they overblock. It allows you to continue your attack. It allows you to swing 3 times. I mean, this is just the goated card right here. All right, Shift the Tide of Battle. Now, this is a card that has not seen much usage in Dawnblade Dorinthea decks, and I think that's about to change because this is an excellent card if you're being aggressive. Let me paint you a little bit of a picture. So let's say you're playing against a Cindra. Cindra doesn't like to block. You don't like to block. The game could be 4 turns. This gives go again and an agility plus a Dawnblade. Shift the Tide of Battle gives go again plus an agility token. So that's go again for 2 turns. Then your bolters, let's go again for 3 turns. This one card gives you enough go again for the whole game in aggro matchups. And it's very, very easy for this to have the target weapon with power higher than its base gets go again. Very, very easy. A lot of the deck will synergize with it. Obviously, the Dawnblade counter also going to be live as well. Creating the on-hit of agility also incentivizes the opponent to block a little bit, which in turn helps our reprise cards. But yeah, it's just excellent. If you see this, try to play it out in general, especially if you see it really early because the game is not going to go very long generally. Got 3 copies of Provoke. This is one of the cards that help us against Verdance in particular. They like to keep 2 card hands that are extremely fragile to disruption, and this is one of the ways to not get hit by Felling of the Crown or Burn Bear, Light Up the Leaf, stuff like that, or it messes them up if they want to keep their Millennium Tree. It has just so much synergy. Obviously, also is able to pull a card and enable reprise. Obviously, that's a little bit dependent on the matchup because they could reveal a reaction and then just discard it instead of it becoming a defending card. So you need to be very, very aware of how your opponent's deck is constructed. But just the fact that Provoke exists helps us throw our opponents off a little bit. Also, just provides a little bit of ambiguity to what we're doing. But yeah, in general, though, it's a little bit rare that we're playing our blues unless we draw 2 of them because we only have 19 blues here, which is kind of low. However, the theory behind that is, hey, we have Courage of Bladehold, which on an important turn basically acts like an extra blue. And then once we're in the mid-game, we've already played a lot of our reds and yellows. And if we shuffle our deck with Singing Steelblade, our blue ratio actually improves over the game, which means that we're closer to, that traditional 22, 23, 24 blue count in a Dawnblade Dorinthea deck. So, yeah, even though there's not that many blues here, I've never really ran into issues with, not having enough resources because a lot of stuff does cost 0. 1 in 20 hands you will draw the quad red, but you know it shouldn't be too much of an issue in general. All right, let's keep going through these blues here. We got 1 copy of Overpower. Sometimes you need to have this as a closer. Also, sometimes you tutor this with Singing Steelblade at the extreme late game. It's a card that's just there as a one-up just to kind of round out the deck. Diamond Amulet, on the other hand, this card is so good. Time Snap, for those of you who are Dorinthea boomers, you will remember that Time Snap potions were used at one point, especially against very defensive decks. You often needed that for triple hitting, especially when you drew like a Twinning Blade or something like that. Now, the difference, though, is that Time Snap Potion is an action. Diamond Amulet is an instant, which is a massive difference because you're able to swing your Dawnblade, let it hit, and then pop the Diamond Amulet to give you a go, to give you go again, quote unquote, right? If you have a Diamond Amulet on the field, every turn just becomes so threatening. This is better than Bolters because Bolters has to hit. This card with a Twinning Blade basically makes your turn godlike. And this is just a great card. It doesn't block, but it's powerful enough to be there. I think this is actually a staple nowadays for Dawnblade Dorinthea. If you haven't played with this card, I highly recommend that you try it. It is really, really, really strong. Okay, speaking of really strong cards, we got Glint the Quicksilver. This is a card that in this build is very likely to have reprise. If you are playing correctly, you're being very, very aggressive. Drawing a card is good. Oftentimes you're going to draw a reaction, which is just going to be, you know, extra sauce there. We have Trot Along and Hit and Run. 0 cost Go Again is fine. In general, though, we don't want to be playing these. We want to have agility tokens. We want to play Unsheathed. We want to play Shift the Tide of Battle. But hey, if we have some blues that give us Go Again, why not? Of note, Hit and Run does give a little +1 bump. So there is a little bit of a trickiness that you can do there where you attack with agility, they overblock, then you can go Hit and Run, get a little bump, and then swing twice after the first attack. Quite nice. 2 copies of Emboldened Blade. This is a card that if you are an elite Dorinthea player playing in real life with a lot of experience, I think the hit rate on this card should be 70 to 80%. It is fairly obvious to me when my opponent has a D-React. And, you know, sometimes you just get lucky and you can, if they like ponder off a mental block and they put the card into Arsenal and then you Embolden Blade that, I mean, it's one of the best feelings ever. This is a card that can, you know, target a lot of defensive decks, or if you're setting up a little bit, oftentimes your opponent will have a D-React in Arsenal, and this allows you to blow it up. If you are not comfortable playing Emboldened Blade, you can put in Nip at the Heels. I think that's totally fine. But I think this card is slightly more powerful, especially against Verdance, which is where a lot of the problems come from. So, yeah, give it a go. It's pretty powerful, and this card does have a little bit of there's some sentimental value there because LSS did give this to us for as a spoiler, so I do really like that card. So, Beat of the Iron Song. This is the new expansion slot card from Super Slam. This card's really powerful when you have multiple Dawnblade counters because being able to give a bump and go again at the same time means if they don't have a D-React, they are in a lot of trouble and you probably just win the game from that position. The other modes that, you know, they can't gain defense, that's also relevant for Barkskin of the Millennium Tree. Damage can't be prevented. Obviously very good against stuff like Mental Block and, you know, the Prism Ward and stuff like that. So really, really powerful card. It is it has helmetless Dory in the art, so it's definitely good, right? Okay, I think I've talked enough about this main deck. This is 54 cards. So yeah, let's take a look at the sideboard, the equipment and all that, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, let's take a look at the sideboard now. Let's start off with the equipment here. All right, so we have 3 helmets in this list. Most matchups we're going to be running Crown of Providence. You need to aggressively use this to fix your hands, and this just contributes to the fridge that we have. Having 7 block on demand for our armor is very, very good. Obviously, it allows us to stop most of the on hits in the game. It'll also effectively give us 47 life, or a little bit more than 47 life in many, many matchups. Crown of Providence allows you to basically arsenal anything that you draw with Steelblade Supremacy. Even if you draw Authority of Ataya, you can put that into arsenal, crown it away. And basically, a lot of hands are close to perfect, but not quite perfect, and this could allow you to, fix your hand just a little bit more, kind of like Sink Below does. But this doesn't cost you a card, so it allows you another look to either get that blue that you need, or maybe you have 2 sources of go again, you don't need them, or you doubled up on cards, stuff like that. We also have Kabuto of Imperial Authority. This is obviously played against the Warriors, Reinhardt, classes like that. Max, I guess, as well. Currently just kind of a necessary evil that, if you just have to have it, or you're at a major disadvantage in the Warrior Mirror. We also have Nulren Hood. This is basically played against Vincent and Kano. You could also play it against Verdance, but I actually prefer just to run AB0 against Verdance and just, beat them up with Dawnblade. So yeah, that's the helmet choice. In the chest piece, we have Courage of Blade Hold and Grains of Bloodspell. Courage is used in almost every single matchup. Grains is just used against Gravy Bones and a very, very few, very, very select other matchups. Basically, you can farm the allies and generate Vigor tokens, and basically that allows you to block out and still clear, which basically puts the Gravy player in a really, really tough position, because if they don't present enough burst damage turns, they can't win the game, and Grains of Bloodspill allows you to block that burst turn plus clear an ally, which is really good. If you ever have 2 Vigor tokens and an Agility token against them as well, that's just a giant, giant headache for them. Got Braveforge Bracers as well. We're not using Iron Song Versus because we want to withhold as much information as possible, and Braveforge Bracers obviously is a very, very nice resource outlet. Also makes things come in for a breakpoint, a little bit of extra damage throughout the game. Very, very nice. And it also blocks twice for 3, which is very nice. We got Refraction Bolters, obviously. This allows you to triple hit. This allows you to more likely get reprise on your Glint the Quicksilvers. This allows you to be very, very aggressive when you draw the correct hand, if you don't have a go again. And basically paired with the aggressive style of Dawnblade, this is worth quite a bit of value. We will generally block with this very early in this list because we never really know when we're going to break it, and if we ever get tempo and we haven't blocked with it, we might need it on the next turn, right? All right, so that's the equipment. Just 8 pieces of equipment / weapons, which means we have a fairly large sideboard. So remember that the main deck is 54 cards. We're going to need to bring in 6 cards. Typically, we are going to bring in the Glistening, the Overpower, and the Agile Engagement. But it is very, very matchup dependent. So let's run through those. So Glistening Steelblade, this is a very powerful card that demands respect from your opponent. It also gives you a lot of information about your opponent's hand, whether or not they block on a Glistening Steelblade turn and how they block. Gives you a lot of information. This allows you to snowball very, very quickly, and yeah, it's very, very strong against decks like Cindra. It's a go against Gravy. This is a card that we're not playing against Verdance because very, very defensive decks that have a lot of D-reacts or have a lot of armor, this is a card that is less good against those. But against most decks in the metagame, this is a pretty powerful card. Next up, we have Dauntless. Dauntless Red. This is a card that I believe really throws the Verdance off balance, which is very important right now. Dauntless plus Ataya plus holding back a lot of cards means it's very difficult for the Verdance player to determine the texture of your hand. Also, because they don't run Tunic, it reduces the max block value of their hand. For example, let's say they have 3/3 blocks and a Sink Below. Typically, that would block for 13. But if you play Dauntless and then attack them, they can block for 6 and play the D-React, so they can block for 10, or they can block with 3 cards and save 1. And when they block with 3 cards and save 1, generally that tells you that that's a D-React they want to set into Arsenal, and that enables things like Emboldened Blade. So basically reducing their max block value is very, very important. Also, just being able to trip them up. So Dauntless plus Ataya plus Provoke plus the Fridge really forces them to, it just knocks them off balance, forces them to, like they generally they have to throw at least 1 attack during the game. I think if they're just trying to kill you with pure arcane damage, you keep throwing 5-card hands at them, I don't think they quite get there from my experience. So yeah. Great card if you know your opponent plays D-Reacts and doesn't run Tunic. This is a great card. Even if they run Tunic, this is a good card. All right, I guess we can go down the line here. Sink Below. I mean, obviously Sink Below is a very, very good card. However, the way that this deck utilizes Sink Below is a little bit different. You really aren't playing this unless you want to stop burst turns or you think the game is going to go very long. You aren't, like, for example, against Dash IO, I'm not going to bring this in, even though traditionally having 4 power cards is very good because it stops the breakpoint, stops the boom grenades. Against Dio, I don't give a crap if the boom grenades are hitting, right? I just want to snowball my Dawnblade quicker and go from there. So basically, played against Gravy, played against some of the Warriors. If they're a pummel-based deck, if you're playing against Assassin, you could also bring it in. But just remember that this card reduces the amount of cards that you can attack with by 1. And you really want to be attacking with 5-card hands with this deck as well. Especially the first couple turns that you are trying to get the Dawnblade going. All right, let's go up here to our attack reactions. We have 1 copy of Red Overpower. This is one of the most card efficient lines that we have. It's got it's worth 2 Jagged Edge cards, but it only costs 1 card. Obviously the resource cost is higher, but yeah, playing Red Overpower gives you that option of going over. So Warrior has several ways of mixing it up. They either go through their opponent, in other words, like they blocked 12, you attack for 6, they block 12, and you're like, all right, I'm just going to pump it 3 times and go through you. Or you can go around with cards like Twinning Blade, or you can set up, which is like cards like Epot, Ruby, Amulet. There's a 4th mix-up that you could do, which involves cards like Command and Conquer. However, this list is not running any attack action cards at all. So we're just limited to those 3 mix-ups, which is through, around, and setup. And this is one of those cards that allows us to go through our opponent. Very similar to Route. This effectively gives +6, which is a big, big statement. And oftentimes you tutor this with Singing Steelblade, it is very demoralizing for your opponent. We got a 3rd copy here of Jagged Edge. When you need the effect, you need the effect. But there are many matchups where this is just kind of just sitting in the sideboard. We got 2 copies of Agile Engagement. This kind of rounds out the agility generation in this deck. So we have Lead with Speed, we have Shift the Tide of Battle, and we have Agile Engagement. You add all those up, you add your bolters, you add your glints and Beat of the Iron Song, Unsheathed and all that, and Go Again is really never a big issue with this deck from my experience. You only get the agility if they defend with an attack action card. However, many decks in the format are attack action based, so getting this turned on is not too difficult. Only blocks for 2, but that is kind of an indication that it is a good card and you should just play it out instead of blocking with it. We got several extra blues here in the sideboard. Authority of Ataya. I made a whole video on this card, but this is a card that taxes your opponent's D-reacts for the whole turn. If they are not a Tunic deck, this, similarly to Dauntless, reduces their max block value and allows you to do what you're trying to do. This is a card that you really need to know your matchups for. This card is either phenomenal or very, very mid. We got 2 copies of Epot. Well, technically we have Epot Ruby Amulet, but if you don't have a Ruby Amulet, you can run 2 Epots. That's okay. But the reason why we're doing like a 1-1 split is that it helps a little bit against Huntsman's Hunter Hunted, and there could be several other effects like several assassin effects that care about similar names. But yeah, basically these allow us to up our blue count a little bit. This also allows us to set up a little bit, and in the longer matchups, this basically acts as an extra copy of Courage of Bladehold, which allows us to have 2 triple hit turns, which, is very, very good in those longer matchups, obviously, because we're not going to be getting Dawnblade counters as easily against these defensive decks or games where the game goes longer. In order to extract value, we will have to triple hit, and Courage of Bladehold allows us to do that once, and then Ruby Amulet and the Diamond Amulet and the Epot and all that synergize and help us basically have an extra copy of Courage and Bolters later in the game. This also allows us to pay for our heavy attack reacts and just allows us to go into a 6-card offense if we would like to, which is sometimes what you need against very, very defensive decks. So we got a copy of those. Finally, we have 2 copies of Midas Touch. This is played against Prism. You technically could also play this against Gravy if you want to like snipe Scubas. But basically, this card allows us to execute a very particular game plan against Prism, which is basically letting the Heralds hit, letting them get their ward out, and we normally just clear the ward with Jagged Edge and Beat of the Iron Song and just being aggressive in general. So they don't really get to keep their Angels more than 1 turn in general. But there is a path to victory for Prism, and that often involves playing out a Soraya, the one that draws cards, and then protecting her with an ALS. And if your opponent is able to get a Soraya out and get an ALS out, you cannot clear the Soraya, which means they have a decent chance of getting a lot of tempo from that, a lot of wards set up from that, or another ALS setup. All 3 scenarios are very, very bad for us. So Midas Touch allows us to snipe an Angel behind ALS, which basically is a checkmate move because Prisms are extremely reliant on Soraya. Now, they can get back Soraya, but that's why we have 2 copies. So not only are we more likely to see this early, we can deal with their bullshit twice. So yeah, this is the sideboard here. I'm going to go through a couple sideboard plans for the common meta matchups. Again, if you want the full sideboard guide, that will be available on Patreon. But yeah, I'm going to run through several of the common matchups for you guys. So let's jump into that now. All right, first up we got Cindra, which is the most popular deck at the moment. Was almost a quarter of people playing at Worlds was on Cindra. So basically, we're going to be bringing in these equipment. Kabuto stops their Wrath of Retribution turn. It also stops an Ignite. This is a card that I jam. If I see Ignite, I just jam the Kabuto. If I see Wrath, obviously I jam the Kabuto as well. If there's a breakpoint that I really need to stop, I will jam the Kabuto. This matchup does not go very long. It might go 7-8 turns, but in reality, the first 3-4 turns really determine the game. Basically, you're going to use your armor to deny mask once. Maybe you can deny mask twice, and then after that, who cares? Let them have their mask momentum trigger. Let them draw their head jab. Who cares? We're just going to focus on poking them with Dawnblade and protecting the counters that we worked hard for. Courage, bracers, bolters, standard stuff there. Obviously, we're running Dawnblade. Bringing in 6 cards to bring us up to 60. Glistening Steelblade is one of the power cards for the deck. Basically, when we see Glistening or Steelblade Supremacy, that's our go turn. And we basically will crack Courage, get in there, and make life hell for them. This card also allows us to get a very, very good read on whether they have a D-React, because how they block. This card gives us a lot of information about not only the texture of their hand and what's in their arsenal, but also what type of player they are. Whether they play scared, play aggressive, whether they try to hedge their bets and stuff like that. And that can give you some information on best strategy to close the game out. 1 copy of Overpower. At some point, the Cindra will be throwing their hand down, and this basically provides the third route, you could say. Combined with Twinning Blade creates a situation where once they throw down their hand, very likely we can either kill them with going through or going around. 2 copies of Agile Engagement. Their deck is almost all attack action cards. Obviously, they have things like Ancestral Empowerment and Throw Dagger and stuff like that, but oftentimes if they're blocking, you're going to get an agility token. And yeah. Alright, so that's how we sideboard against Cindra. In terms of strategy and tactics, we're just trying to be very aggressive. This is a matchup where you prefer to go second, but honestly, going first is not bad either, because you can often either set up or they leak damage. And, a 4-card Cindra is basically never going to be able to get mask against you. And you can, if you got a great hand, you can just let them hit and then just go from there. This is a matchup where you're going to be very, very aggressive. Once you see Glistening or Supremacy, that's your go turn. Once you have counters, you need to protect them and you need to not block. This is a matchup where you basically only block if you have a dead card. If you have a semi-functional hand, even like a hand that you basically are just converting into a Braveforge Bracer activation and maybe paying for something, totally fine. Also, Arseling is somewhat important as well, because I feel like they're less likely to run cards like Breaking Point against us because we just have so much armor, like 2 block plus a 3 block. It just stops that. So, yeah, just be aggressive against them, get in there, beat them up with Dawnblade. I would say that against elite players, this is probably a 70-30 matchup for Dory. If you fail to find a power card in time, you can lose, but I do think they have a lot of difficulties blocking us, and even if they have like 6 D-Reacts, it's not hard for us to get over a single D-React because a lot of their blocks for 2. So even if they have a D-React, that's just basically 2-3 blocks at that point. So yeah, that's Cindra. Let's move on. All right, next up we have Verdance. In this matchup, we have the option of either running Null Rune Hood or Crown of Providence. I lean towards just running Crown of Providence, especially if you are going first. Null Rune Hood is effectively 2 life if you're going second, because they're very likely to send Arcane at you. However, there's a chance they don't send Arcane at you on turn 0, in which case this is basically just giving you 2 effective life if you have 2 resources at the very end of the game. You could go either way. In general, I think Crown of Providence is better, but you could run Null Rune Hood. Then obviously we're running Courage, Bracers, and Bolters. We're bringing in our Defense Reaction Disruption package, which is the Dauntlesses and the Ataya. This combined with a lot of the other cards in our deck allow us to throw the Verdance off balance just enough that I think we can get there. If you do not start in the mid-30s and they don't start in the 40s, I think you actually get there quite a bit of the time. This is a matchup that I think if you're playing against elite players, you're slightly disadvantaged, maybe like 45%. Assuming you're going second. If you get to go first against elite players, I think this is 50-55%. And then if the Verdance is not an elite player, all it takes is one miss block and you can really blow them out. So yeah, this is a matchup that it's on the Verdance player to play perfectly, and that's really difficult to do when you hold back so much information. We're going to add our attack reacts from our sideboard just to give us more oomph. Overpower, obviously, we're going to be playing 5-card hands, and having a route or overpower will enable a lot of lines. Agile engagement, live quite a bit of the time. They have fruits, plow under, felling, so autumn's touch, stuff like that. So very likely that you are going to get an agility token from that. And then we add in the 3rd copy of Jagged Edge. This has particular synergy when you have 2 attack reacts. So you basically present Dawnblade, they block, you pump, and then they either de-react it or they have mental block, and then you can blow them out with Jagged Edge. I wouldn't say it's a common line, but it's something that can happen, and they have to kind of account for that, because if you Jagged Edge a mental block, they don't get the Ponder and they don't get the 2 prevention, which is really, really, really big. Also, similarly with Beat of the Iron Song, assuming you have some counters, you might select the damage can't be prevented mode, assuming they haven't used the mental edge yet. So, okay, so general game plan against Verdance is we aren't blocking, we aren't ABing, we are attacking them relentlessly for like 8 turns. The first physical attack they send, we jam our armor, which basically nullifies their Cadaverous Tilling, their plow, their whatever. So they are somewhat likely to enact the 6x6 strategy against us, which is basically throwing 6 arcane damage at us 6 times and then killing us with Storm Striders. Kind of using, the tree or their waning moon, stuff like that. So they're basically either going to try to deal 40 arcane damage to us, or they are going to, try to play mid-range with us, both of which our general strategy is that we're not blocking. So it is important to have a plan for a D-React. It is also very important to play out our agility creation, because that enables us to have Twinning Blade lines. It is fairly obvious when the Verdance player does not have a defensive card. Not only will their body language change a little bit, but they will often not block or overblock. Very, very few Verdances, from my experience, will even block a aggro Dawnblade Dory without a D-React. So yeah, you can play around that a little bit. I think this matchup, if you work on it, is actually not too bad. And just in general, being able to hold a lot of information back, because we aren't really playing as many front pumps, allows the opponent to make up make mistakes, and also allows us to punish those mistakes, which is very, very important. This is a matchup that you need to be a little bit tricky. You need to make them uncomfortable. You need to throw them off balance, and we have the tools to do it. So, yeah. All right, let's move on. All right, up next we have Gravy Bones. So against Gravy, we're going to be running Crown of Providence. That's because he doesn't have a weapon for Kabuto. And the way we like to use Crown of Providence is when they throw Conqueror of the High Seas at us. This allows us to kind of dodge that. Also allows us to have a little bit of extra block on a burst turn, which is kind of the name of the game against Gravy. We're basically trying to clear their board and present Dawnblade counters at them. And generally, this is going to end with the Gravy Bones fatigued. That is our primary game plan. We are not going to take damage for no reason. We are very, very content to just block and block and block and block and kind of force the Gravy to do something. Grains of Blood Spill, this allows us to attack with Dawnblade and create Vigor tokens either from hitting them or for hitting their allies. And if we have 1 or 2 Grains tokens, Vigor tokens, that allows us to block with our whole hand and still clear an ally, or play a pump and then clear an ally. Very, very important card. Bracers and Bolters are there, obviously, but Bolters has particular use in this matchup because this is kind of your get out of jail free card when you don't draw Go Again and you need to clear 2 allies, or your opponent gave you full tempo and you have a Supremacy and a Blade Flurry that are kind of just sitting around. This does allow you to get in there and be aggressive. In general, armor usage in this matchup is very different than in the other matchups. This is a matchup that you are not just jamming your armor whenever they first attack you. You basically are using this to deny gold, either through mainly through the hook. So basically preventing Gravy from getting gold is an important part of the game plan. They'll often have to just rely on Tipple and Lone Shark and stuff like that, which to help get their allies into the graveyard. And basically using the armor to lower their burst damage turns and prevent them from getting gold is how we want to use armor. Dawnblade obviously is going to grow quite large in this matchup. However, the matchup often comes down to them letting you grow the Dawnblade a little bit and then resetting the Dawnblade when they have a Blood in the Water or Sink Below. Because it's very difficult to get through a D-React when you have to spend some cards on defense and then clear the ally and then attack Gravy. Or let's say they put pressure on you and you have to block a bit and they don't have an ally out, but you have Dawnblade counters. Oftentimes you're just going to be working with a very, very small hand, and it'll be very difficult to protect the Dawnblade counters against a D-React, which is totally fine. During the game, if they reset the Dawnblade several times, that's fine. That's our primary condition is not to snowball Dawnblade counters completely. It is actually to run them out of cards. And these cards kind of help with that in kind of like a weird way. Glistening Steelblade. Now, this does say hit a hero, so this is not very effective at just clearing 2 allies. I mean, I guess technically it's effective. It's Go Again, but it costs 1. But it does block for 3. It does get up our Go Again count a little bit. It also fixes our deck ratio in terms of pitch a little bit. It's good enough to play, so we play it. Sink Below, this is a card that helps us match their burst turns on offense with burst turns on defense. Setting this into Arsenal, and then you kind of wait for them to play Conqueror or a Leyline turn, which will often deal somewhere around 20 damage. Basically, if we block with 3 or 4 cards and we have a Sink Below, that means they're not really punching through for very much. And Gravy Bones is very, very reliant on Leyline and Conqueror of the High Seas to really reduce your life total. And every single time you meet them with a Sink Below, it just makes it really, really tough for them to get you from 40 to 0. The Dauntlesses and the Jagged Edge are here simply because they block 3, and they technically could allow you to clear some problematic allies that have 6 health. This is a matchup, so you see that we're running 64 cards now. This is a matchup that I played somebody round 15 of Worlds, and it was the closest I've ever come to losing. Now, obviously, this was a very, very elite player, and he was very, very versed in the matchup. And I found out that if they can recycle Leyline several times, you might barely run out of cards. Because I presented 60 to him, and I had like 3 left. So this basically allows us to run 64, and that kind of gets around the double scuba 5 Leyline nonsense that they can do. So yeah, this just gives us a little bit of a buffer in terms of deck density. But in general, you just send 15 to 18 allies to the bottom of the sea, block the conks, block the Leyline turns, and the deck literally runs out of damage. So yeah, this matchup against very elite players, I would say, is 80–85%. If the gravy player is not an elite player, this is close to 100%. This matchup requires them to know exactly what they're doing, and yeah, it's not easy for them, and well, that's one of the reasons why I think Dorinthea is one of the best decks in the format right now. All right, let's move on. All right, up next we have Prism. Against Prism, we're going to be running our fridge, and the main way we're going to be using this is to deny Herald of Protection and Herald of Erudition, or just any Herald that we don't really want to deal with. Our armor is going to disappear very quickly in this matchup because we're going to be aggressive with Courage and Bolters, but also because we don't want the game to go too long, because one of their strongest plays for getting tempo back is ALS, and we really don't want them to see ALS. So we really want the game to be like 3–4 turns, and there are several ways to do that. Glistening Steel Blade allows us to be very, very aggressive, allows us to snowball counters. If we play Glistening Steel Blade and they don't respond to it, we are pretty much in the clear to hit them, and very, very unlikely that Prism will try to contest us, especially if we have 5 cards in hand and all that. They do run cards like Soul Shield, however, that isn't the greatest card against our that isn't the greatest D-react against our attack reacts, because often we just pump by 3. So them over blocking by 6 is a little bit inefficient for them. We will be bringing in our 3rd copy of Jagged Edge. This plus Beat of the Iron Song allows us to let the Heralds hit, let the Angels flip, or let the Figments flip into Angels, because they aren't getting the value from the ward, and oftentimes a pump plus damage can't be prevented means we are hitting, which triggers our Dorinthea ability, which allows us to hit them again, which snowballs our counters, which shortens the game. This is a matchup where you really don't want the game to go very long. Traditionally, I played this matchup extremely slowly, but this build of Dorinthea really needs to say, who cares? Herald hits, whatever. Go grab your Figment, go make your shield, go you know, set your card into soul, all that, doesn't matter. We got 2 copies of Midas Touch as well to help with the Soraya ALS loop, or it's not really a loop, but like the combo of protecting Soraya with ALS. This allows you to snipe the Angel behind the ALS. And we have 2 copies, so we can see it a little bit quicker. We can also deal with that combo twice. General strategy, be aggressive. They can't block well. They don't want to block. As soon as Prism goes down a card, they aren't sending double Herald generally. And yeah, don't clear any of the Spectra Auras except Genesis. Obviously, we don't really care about you know, passing Mirage because we don't have any poppers. Yeah, just be aggressive, get in there, and yeah, you will generally try to plan your turns around the bigger the blowout cards. So if you can set Jagged Edge or Beat of the Iron Tongue into the arsenal, that is a very, very strong play, because they don't really have cards that attack that, and that allows you to take a round of damage, strike back, knowing that you have this effect. Singing Steelblade can grab those, but you're not guaranteed a reprise. Yeah. All right, let's move on. All right, the final matchup I want to go over is against Kassai. So against Kassai, we're going to be bringing in Kabuto. This obviously stops the Blood on Her Hands turns. Also, if they play Spoils of War and Slice and Dice and stuff like that, this will allow you to stop that. Also, you can bait out their Kabuto oftentimes by blocking with your own Kabuto on a turn where you won't be affected by Kabuto being played against you. What I mean by that is, like, let's say you have a hand with a bunch of pumps and an agility token. You could jam your Kabuto on their turn. And basically, when you use Kabuto, the other warrior player is way more likely to use their Kabuto. That's just kind of how it is. And then, you know, you attack them with Go Again. They're like, all right, you got like 3 cards back. They're like, he's going to attack again. So they just jam their Kabuto. You pump it a couple times, arsenal and pump. It's a really good way to deal with it. Once the Kabuto's down, you can execute things like the triple hit combo with Courage and, you know, Glistening Steelblade Supremacy and stuff like that. So yeah, the sideboard here for Kassai is kind of a middle of the road style, because we don't know if they're going to be aggressive like a draw side Kassai, or they're going to be a little bit more defensive. So we're kind of, you know, playing around just a general Kassai. So that means we're going to be bringing in more than 60 cards. This is 68, I believe. And the reason for that is that this matchup could potentially go very long, and there are a lot of effects that we do want. Glistening Steelblade, if they are the more aggressive version, this is a card that we're going to be playing it out, and they will often just use their armor, or, you know, block it evenly with a D-React in the back. And if we have 2 attack reacts, we can get through. Also, if we go to the very late game, you can pitch stack this card into the second cycle. Sink Below, obviously going to be very good at preventing all the on-hits like Copper, Gold, Blood Falls, Blade, and stuff like that. So we got those. Dauntless is also very important, because if they are a defensive Kassai, they will not be running Tunic, and this reduces the max block of their hand, and it also gives you tempo because they have to pay for their D-Reacts. We got 2 copies of Agile Engagement, 1 copy of Overpower, 1 copy of Jagged Edge. This just gives you extra pumps. If they are a defensive Kassai deck, you're going to need these extra pumps, even though Agile Engagement is almost never going to be live, unless they're blocking with Nourishing Emptiness. But Overpower, oftentimes going to be able to come in for 6. Jagged Edge, sometimes you're occasionally going to catch a Take It on the Chin, which is very good because it denies the prevention, also denies the agility from being created. But this just gives you a little bit of an insurance if you play against a defensive Kassai deck that you can punch through. Authority of Ataya, very similar to Dauntless, just gives you that extra disruption. Even if they are the aggressive Kassai, they're likely running at least 3 copies of Sink Below, and being able to throw them off balance 1 or 2 turns is all you need. This is a matchup that I think is slightly unfavored for Dorinthea, but if you pilot it well, and you know how to bait out a Kabuto block from them, I think that you can get there. Yeah. All right, let's kind of wrap things up, and we'll get out of here. All right, guys, let's wrap things up here. So we've gone over the main board, we've gone over the sideboard. I've told you how to sideboard and play against the top 5 most meta-relevant decks. And yeah, I hope that you guys will take this out for a spin and really enjoy it. This deck is a large departure from previous decks that I've shown off on this channel, and it really comes down to the fact that Dorinthea is an aggro deck. This is something that I always kind of rolled my eyes at that statement. You know, when LSS released their new hero page, they classified Dorinthea as an aggro deck, and I was like, nah, not really. It's a mid-range deck. You know, we need to adapt to our opponent. We need to, you know, blend offense and defense correctly. We need to know when to attack and when to defend and all that. And the more and more I've played this deck, I just realized, no, we just need to Unga Bunga. We need to play Courage of Blade Hold. We need to crack Courage. We need to slam down that Steel Blade Supremacy, and we just need to get in that ass. This is a deck that basically is going to make your opponent extremely uncomfortable. You know, snowballing Dawnblade counters, creating on hits, and just, you know, putting them. I mean, Dawnblade cuts people up really fast. If you're triple hitting people, if you're accumulating counters, if you're drawing cards off Steel Blade Supremacy. If they have to overblock, there's just so many ways that you can extract value with this deck. And a lot of it comes down from these two cards creating this token, along with Lead with Speed. Creating agility tokens is the modern version, is the modern way to play Dorinthea. I have completely abandoned Spoils of War, as many people have. And now we're saying goodbye to Warrior's Valor, because paying 1 and a card for a chance at Go Again is not where I want to be. I want every Dawnblade swing to be threatening to go through or go around them. And, you know, that's really the key to this deck. All right, guys. If you want the sideboard guide, go check that out. It's in the our Patreon. But we also have a public deck link below, so you guys can check that out. It'll have the buttons for the 5 matchups that I talked about. So yeah, if you have any questions about this deck, feel free to ask me. I believe I was pretty thorough on this. This is one of the longer deck techs, so thank you for, you know, sticking it out here with me. So yeah, I really believe this deck is a very high A, maybe low S, to be frank. You're great into Cindra, you're great into Gravy, you're okay into Verdance, you're okay into Prism, you're okay into Kassai. Like, if you're neutral to positive in the top 5 matchups, it's really good. And there's a lot of flair and style that you can show off with this deck style. So yeah, take it out for a spin. I hope some of you guys will bring it to some tournaments and hope that you'll have some success with this type of deck. So yeah, this is where Dorinthea is at the very end of 2025. So we've gone all the way back. It's time is a circle here, back to the Unga Bunga Crucible War days. So, all right, this has been Josh Lau with TheCardGuyz. Thank you for watching this deck tech. We'll see you guys later. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey man, did you get the KO deck for Worlds? No one's doing that, okay? Like,
Courage of Blade Hold Horse now. Don't scale if you get greedy. You're getting 2 cards. What's up, guys? Put him in the middle for now. That's perfect. All right, next year. RTN champion. Yeah, we're gonna have to order a couple more.
Thanks for watching the video.
Here's some more TheCardGuyz videos you might enjoy.